right, good afternoon, everybody. How are y'all doing?
Great.
So today we're going to be talking about abortion rights and reproductive health care because we know they're absolutely destroying reproductive health care rights in this state. They're taking away our right to bodily autonomy, taking away people's rights to care and equal treatment. You hear them? Okay, great. No, you're totally good. So when they make these unscientific laws that use religious doctrine to create legal doctrine, they're hurting the people of this state. When they're controlling abortion down to 6 weeks before most people know that they're pregnant, they're hurting the people of the state. And the laws regulating that go by the menstrual period. So if you had a period and then you get pregnant on the last day of that period, you'll only be pregnant for 2 weeks and still fall under that 6-week abortion ban. Because they don't care about any actual values. They just care about restricting the people, taking control of the people. Does anybody have anything they want to say about abortion rights and what they care about, what they care about seeing changed? Because we have Amendment 4 on the ballot this year, which if we vote for, can restore our reproductive health care rights back to where they should be, back to where Roe v. Wade had been before, back to where before Desantis and my opponent, Danny Burgess, took them down from. He actually said on the Senate floor that he would rather lose his next election. He would rather always fight for his stand on this issue than ever go back. And you know what? I'm fine with that. Let's let him lose this next election. Because restricting our people is terrible. And besides the human right to choose when to start your family, let's talk about the economics of it. If we let women have the right to reproductive freedom, they would earn on average $1,000 more a year. If we let women have the right to reproductive freedom, 33,000 more women would be able to enter the labor force in Florida alone. It's crazy when you give people their freedoms and it helps a free market. We let people choose for themselves when to start their family. They don't get put down into these cycles of poverty. We let people choose for themselves when to access their health care. They don't end up in these crises that the state then has to pay to get them out of. Another thing is that it hurts our doctors' ability to provide other forms of health care. OBGYNs are fleeing Florida because they don't want to be under the restrictive policies. Besides just banning abortions outright, they do some sneaky things, like requiring abortion clinics to have outpatient care licenses. Which is just a ridiculous requirement for an abortion clinic where 90% of all abortions, or 95%, are done before 26 weeks. They're done just with a pill. There's no need for outpatient care for them. But because they're putting those insane restrictions, many businesses can't function in this state. Another atrocious thing is that on our college campuses, I used to have to fight this every single day when I went to USF, go Bulls. There'd be people there just shouting about how abortion's evil and intentionally triggering these people's trauma. You know, abortion should be safe and legal, but it's also traumatic. It can be. It's an invasive medical procedure some of the time. But they just allow these people to come on our campuses, harass our students, showing fake images of dead, bloody babies, which is just insane. But our universities can't ban them because then DeSantis would fire the presidents. What we need is a free Florida. And Republicans will pretend that that's what they want. They'll project this, care for freedom, but in every single turn, they'll take away our freedoms. They'll stomp us down to enforce their specific policy agenda, to enforce their specific views of what a family should look like, what a person should be able to do, who they should be able to love, when they should be able to start their family. Does anybody want to talk about reproductive health care anymore? Yeah? Absolutely. So what you're just saying right here on the live is that people get irregular periods, especially if they're on birth control. And those Republicans want to take away all forms of contraception. They want to take away IVF. they're going beyond. Not only are they forcing you to remain pregnant, they're forcing you to get pregnant, which is absolutely absurd. And when you have irregular periods, that 6-week abortion ban really shows how absolutely insane it is. How
Democrats
ridiculous
are
it is to have
evil.
non-experts
From
deciding on
people,
medical
nah,
regulation.
that's all he said.
It endangers the lives of people. If you have an
Fuck.
ectopic pregnancy, doctors are
It's like a
scared
little-
to
little
treat you
war.
for that because they might be giving you an abortion. And then they'll get tried. They'll get harmed for providing their patients with the care they need.
Oh,
They'll
yeah,
be
so
tried
I'm
for
trying to see
using
if
their
there's more.
medical training and their best judgment. Anybody else have anything they want to say about that? Yeah.
So I'm a primary care doctor and a women's health
Someone
specialist.
said see
And
the
it's
people.
amazing to me how almost
see.
every day
See
I
about
have
what?
Go,
as a
yeah.
woman, you need to think carefully about when
No, it's tracking the
when
fortune.
you're going to get pregnant. Because they may be 36, 37, 38, 40, and the risk of a child with Down syndrome, a chromosomal abnormality goes up by 50%. So I say to them, we can't delay
There's no
pregnancy.
AV
You want to get
ban
pregnant.
for
You need to
necessity.
get pregnant because your choices, for so many reasons, but one
Yeah, but
is they have
someone
no
said the audio's
choice.
bad.
If something
No,
happens,
the
if
audio.
there's the fetus has an abnormality, they have no choice in this
Some of
state
the audio.
about what they can do about that pregnancy. So it's anti-family because these women have to choose not to get pregnant or not to attempt to get pregnant.
Yeah.
Before you speak, someone said there's no ban for like necessary procedures. I think you should mention about all those like kids who are born basically dead that the mothers have to carry parts of the state.
No, I mean, that's not entirely true because that has to use the doctor's best judgment, but the state doesn't really care about that. The state's abortion ban is so broad, it covers way too many things. And so even if the doctor might say that it's necessary, the state might not believe it. And there are so many things that we need choice for, like with an abnormality, right? That could hurt the mother. The state doesn't care. Danny Burgess, who doesn't care if he's wrong on this issue, will fight to control women as long as he can. It doesn't matter how many people have to die for him to get his way. Because the truth is, abortion saves lives, often. But they don't care. They just want to restrict women. Do we want to move on to a different subject, or are we going to stay in this thing? You want to say again?
And I also have patients crossing into other states to get their health care that they need. They have to leave Florida in order to get the services that they need.
far away.
They have to go far away, right? And they can't afford to do it. They have to take time off of work. They have to leave their families and get a surgical procedure in another state.
Democrats
for
is live.
$500.
Oh, Tim Walls.
When Roe v. Wade was decided, the average distance you had to travel to get an abortion now increased by 127 miles. The closest place to get an abortion is North Carolina. Most people can't take a week off of work to go up to North Carolina, which then there are even more restrictions. You have to get one appointment and then another appointment at least 24 hours later. You have to get lied to by these despicable people about what an abortion is and how it might harm you. And they claim that their restrictions are about safety. But we know that it decreases a person's safety when they create these unscientific laws. When an ectopic pregnancy seems the same as a normal pregnancy to these laws. Beyond that, the liabilities, the debt that a person has increased by 87% if you don't get access to your health care, if you don't get access to an abortion. They're pushing these people even farther down into poverty by restricting their access to health care. And they'll do it on more things than just reproductive health care. Our state government has spent the past 6 years denying $6 billion in investment into our Medicaid. That would have covered 800,000 people to get health care. That's our tax dollars that we paid to the federal government that we're not getting back. They claim to care about fiscal responsibility, but they don't. They're not giving our money back to us. The services that we have already paid for. Now, we also have to talk about our education. What? Yeah.
you talked about how people don't have time to take off from work and go to another state. In Texas, they're even making that illegal. And anyone who helps someone go to another state can be arrested. But another thing you said, amendment 4 will be valid. It might not be. The governor is now intimidating people who signed the amendment and showing and sending police to their doors to intimidate anyone who signed the petition to try to stifle citizen activism.
Yeah, 36,000 people are going to be harassed by the Desantis troopers because he doesn't want our voices to be heard. Same thing with the voter disenfranchisement. When we, the people, passed that, when our will was spoken, he used the state Senate to make it unenforceable. Same thing will happen when we pass Amendment 4 this November. He will try to use the state Senate and the state House to make that bill unenforceable. That's why voting for local elected officials and our state level officials is so important. Now, we're also talking about somebody just moving to go to a different state to get their health care. Rich people can afford that. Danny Burgess's daughter will always be able to afford that. But the people he doesn't care about, the people he consistently pushes down, will never be able to escape these state mandated cycles of poverty. They'll never be able to go to another state. They have to do good work to go get that health care that they deserve, that they need. More comments?
Yeah, can you explain again why abortion is healthcare? Someone here doesn't seem to understand it.
Abortion is healthcare because it's something going on with your body. I mean, it's pretty much as simple as that. There are a lot of dangerous things that can happen when you're pregnant. A lot. I mean, honestly, I've never even had that question before. It's just your body is under. You got a question, yeah.
Could you also debunk this idea that the border is open? Because somebody just said that like the border is wide open.
That is one of the points that pisses me off the most, that the border is open. That's ridiculous. We have invested a ridiculous amount of money into physical barriers at the border, and those don't work. What we see is that when we invest more money into physical barriers, we have more illegal immigration. The way to curb any illegal immigration is to invest in our judicial system. Because the way most people get in here or stay in here illegally is by overstaying their visas. What the Republicans have been doing is using the border as a focal point for their fear-mongering and for their hate-mongering. I mean, we see on Fox News, they'll promote these stories of illegal immigrants giving the finger to cameras and beating up people, and then a few days later, we'll see that's entirely fake. That it never happened, but they won't print a retraction. They'll just say more and more that our border is wide open. But here's the thing. If it was open, we would actually see fewer illegal immigrants. When we have an easily accessible border, when it doesn't take 23 years to get into this country on average, we see more people are willing to leave the country. When we have a more easily accessible border, we see people use it more rather than just staying in here, sheltering in here. Now, additionally, immigrants are great for this country. I hate how the Democratic Party has been running away from that, how they've been passing these really conservative border bills, which Trump will just reject because it helps his campaign, because he wants to inspire hate. He doesn't want to solve our problems. But immigrants do 2.4 times less crime than native-born populations. For every dollar they take out of our government for social services, they add 7 to our economy. I was talking to a candidate for Congress the other day. I was asking, what's your most important policy? What are you going to change when you get into our Congress? He says, we need to close our border down. And I go, why? He said, because our debt is skyrocketing. These immigrants are doing it. And I go, if your primary concern is the debt, and if you really want to get it down, getting as many immigrants into this country as possible would be the quickest way to do it, because they add to our economy. And when we keep them illegal, when we don't provide them pathways to citizenship, they can't contribute to our economy as much as we want them to. They pay more taxes than native-born populations. They take less in social services than native-born populations. And keeping them illegal hurts our government's ability to get those taxes. It hurts our government's ability to know who's in this country. And it hurts us because our car insurance goes up because illegal immigrants can't get that car insurance. That's why we have 47% of this state without car insurance, or at least that's partially the reason. We need to make sure that people have a pathway to citizenship here. And sanctuary cities, let me do it again, sorry. Sanctuary cities are an incredible program in the United States. But Republicans are attacking them because they sound like they help people. They'll attack any policy that sounds like they help people. They'll say that, oh, it's a way to keep illegal immigrants here, and it's our cities absolutely rejecting any federal enforcement. That's not true. What it does is give illegal immigrants a way to talk to police without them getting instantly deported. It actually makes our community safer. If there's a crime that an illegal immigrant saw, they wouldn't be able to talk to the police about it. But now that they're safe, they have sanctuary, they can come forward.
Oh,
It would seem that the Republican policy on banning abortions would create a snowballing effect of unintended consequences, creating a greater likelihood that you're going to have unwanted births of children with developmental disabilities forced into group homes, going into the already taxed public school system for basically babysitting services and draining funds away from the public school system that needs it for real issue.
Yep. 100%. You said it perfectly. And when they restrict our choices like that, they push children into these cycles of poverty too, right? I mean, if you weren't ready to start a family, then it's going to hurt our entire community because you're being forced to take on one of the most important choices you can ever make. And if they were actually pro-life, they'd be funding our foster system. If they were actually pro-life, they'd be funding our schools to make sure these kids have a great chance to prosper. But they're not. What they do is just try to control the event. They don't care about actually helping the people. We're actually spending 25. I was there at the Senate when they voted on this bill to put $25 million into crisis pregnancy centers. These are clinics that pretend to be abortion clinics, but all they provide are abortion sonograms to see your baby. All they provide are lies to try to keep you from getting an abortion. When they institute these abortion bans, the only thing that ends are safe abortions. We don't see a decrease in abortions, just a decrease in safe abortions. They're putting $25 million into the crisis pregnancy centers. They're only putting $21 million into feeding our homeless populations. They're putting more money into stopping people from getting their health care than they are putting into feeding people. They're actually putting more money in deporting people from the state, pushing them out to Martha's Vineyard illegally and inhumanely. They're spending feeding people in this state.
Plus, more unwanted births, a greater tax on the Medicaid system.
Yep. Which they don't expand. Now, this is one thing the Republicans don't do. But this is one thing the Republicans do a lot. Do short-term maximization of profit instead of long-term growth. What we see with the school system is short-term profit instead of long-term growth. With all this development, it's short-term profit instead of long-term growth. They don't invest in our infrastructure. With Medicaid, they're not expanding it to cover the 800,000 people who need their health care. That means they have crises. Rather than preventing those crises with regular health care, they're allowing those crises to happen. Then our state has spent even more money to get people out of those crises, to help them out of it afterwards, which again, they barely do, compounding the problem. If the Republicans were actually fiscally responsible, they'd plan ahead, instead of just taking all money out of the things that help people. When we invest in the people, we see them grow, we see them prosper. When we invest in our schools, when we strengthen our rights, when we make sure that we have a strong foundation for our state, we have a brighter future. When we take all that money out, we have a dimmer future. What else do I want to talk about? What other policies do you ever see change?
So I just want to speak to the statistic you gave about native-born people being more likely to commit crime. I am an 11-year veteran of the law enforcement within the state. in my department, specifically I work for the Department of Corrections, and I can say from firsthand experience over those last 11 years that I've spent, the number of people who are not from America who I supervise on a daily basis when I go to work is far, far less than the number of people who are born and raised either in this country or in our own counties. The average convict, inmate, whichever term you prefer, that I supervise is from Pasco County, Pinellas County, Hillsborough County, Holt County. They were born there, raised there, and now they're doing their time there. I can speak to that. From my first-hand experience, that is 100% true.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah. But if you watch Fox News, you'll see every single hour of the day the immigrant problem, our open borders, all these people flooding through to take your job, to kill your family. It's ridiculous. It's just fear-mongering. We have lower immigration, illegal immigration than we've seen in a very long time, but you won't hear that from Fox News. You'll just hear more fear-mongering. And talking about our prison system, more of that short-term profit maximization over long-term growth. They've sold out our public institutions to private corporations. They privatized our prison system, which is absolutely disgusting. And then they allow those companies to monopolize that system, lower wages, and try to extract profit from our prisoners, which is disgusting. They'll put our prisons are 30% overcrowded on average. They are crumbling. We are seeing, I forget the exact statistic, we are seeing a massive problem in our private prisons because those companies don't care about the lives of their prisoners. They simply don't. They also don't care about the lives of their officers. They'll pay the lowest wages possible, and that's why we see constant churn in those people. Yeah. It's the same problem all over the place, even in our schools. We have the school to prison pipeline because we have private companies profiting of our students, and they don't want to let that go, so we have private companies profiting off of them as prisoners.
What the? Someone called that a tool.
Well, DNC, I guess.
And firstly, you should mention the prison system. ABC Action News had a piece this last week about how the prison system is charging prisoners, inmates, on a daily basis for their occupancy, whether they're in the cell or not. Even if their sentence has been commuted to probation, if the original term was for X number of days, they're being charged for those number of days, whether they're in the cell or not. Then when they go get an education and try to get a job, they cannot get their license for a professional license, even though they've completed their degree program, because they still have a debt that they owe to the prison system.
One lady had over $100,000 debt. Her sentence was this long, and she was good behavior, and all this she got out here, but her debt was $50 a day was for the full amount.
It's gross. And then, because of the bill they passed to restrict the amendment that we passed to give felons after they clean their sentence, their rights back, they made them pay every single fine, which that is included. And that is ridiculous. We're imprisoning people and making them pay us to be imprisoned. It's crazy. And it's costing our state an insane amount of money. That's why we need to pass Amendment 3. Because we are forcing people into our prisons for having weed. Something that is legal if you have a medical card, which you can't get if you still have a felony conviction. We are forcing these people to be servants of this state, and we're making sure that they are treated as prisoners. In fact, the last legal form of slavery is being in prison, and that's why we see private prisons, because they want people to be slaves. They want that work for free, and they'll charge you for working for them. It's disgusting. In schools, you can't graduate until you get rid of your meal debt. You shouldn't be charging your kids for their meals. And with the $4.2 billion we're spending on privatizing our school system, we would hire the 5,000 teachers we're missing. We would raise national wages or state wages to the national average, and we would eliminate all school meal debt and still save almost $1 billion. They're spending more hurting our system than fixing it. And again, a constant theme. Because they don't care about the people. They just care about their short-term profits. And when they're pricing every single person out of this state. We're pricing the future generations out of this state by not giving them a good education to earn enough money to live in this state. They're destroying the future of our state. The best investment we can make is in our children. The best investment we can make is in the future of our state. And they're not doing it because all they care about is their short term. All they care about is their next election and inspiring more fear to get more votes. But we don't. We care about helping people. We care about building together. We care about achieving a higher, loftier goal together than any of us could do alone. And that means investing in social services. That means investing in our public infrastructure. I hate how much pavement we have in this state. Every single inch of it is paved over. Every single inch of it is a subsidy to GM and Ford and Shell and BP. We have to give all of our money to those companies to use these roads that we pay for. If we had public transportation, if we had a free or at least cheap way to get from A to B, that would help our environment, that would help our wallets, that would help the state itself. That would help flooding, exactly, the state itself. The land in our state is being hurt by our investment in roads. And it's crazy. We know that it is cheaper to make clean energy than to make dirty energy at this point. And yet my opponent, the current representative of this area, sponsored a bill to allow fracking in this state. Yeah, and our water quality is already bad enough. But he also sponsored the bill to make sure our local governments can't legislate how much pollution goes into our water. So he denied our communities from protecting our water. He sponsored companies to frack our state. That is a clear and direct path to selling us out to those corporations. Yes, exactly, which is why we need to kick him out and get me elected. And you go to benbraver.org to help me do that. Yeah. What's your name, by the way?
My name's Josh. Nice to them. Going back to the prison system for one moment, recently, when Secretary Ricky Dixon stepped in to be the secretary of the Florida Department of Corrections, one of the major initiatives that he set forth was to increase the programs available to the inmates. I have seen this at my own prison, which is a quite small prison here in the local area. These programs are essential. These programs are essential for getting these inmates more skills, more opportunities for jobs when they get released, more opportunities to keep their mind occupied with something productive. It may cost money in the short term to provide these programs to these inmates. However, Secretary Dixon has it 100% right when he said, you cannot possibly rehabilitate an inmate if you don't give that inmate tools. We're giving these inmates tools. We need to support Secretary Dixon's initiatives to get these inmates tools. And once we get Mr. Braver elected here, we need to ban the box.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. There's a great organization, Florida Rising, that was proposing a bill to make sure that women who are pregnant couldn't be in solitary confinement. That was ridiculed by my opponents. Just not letting pregnant women be in solitary confinement, give birth in solitary confinement, was ridiculed by my opponent. It is disgusting. But you're absolutely right. You can't rehabilitate anyone if you treat them as non-human. You can't let them be better if you only treat them worse than they are. And we're seeing that same thing happen in our schools. They're taking away arts from our kids. They're taking away any sort of social development from our children so that school to prison pipeline can grow stronger, so those private prisons can get kids in there as soon as possible and make profit off them. And they want higher rates of recidivism because that helps boost their bottom line. They don't care about rehabilitation. All they care about is keeping their prisoners in there. Same thing with our foster system. Because it's private, they care about filling their beds, not getting kids out of there. We have to stop privatizing our public institutions. We have to stop making profit off our people and just helping them, because that makes all the state better. When we let our people profit off themselves, then they get keep that money. They grow their own wealth. When we profit off them, when private corporations profit off them, we drain the resources of our state. Any other concerns people have? Any other policies they want to see changed? Yes.
Actually, I'd like to mention that I used to volunteer with a youth diversion program, and a lot of the kids that go through that are just really stupid, right? And I think the good thing about that program is that no one went to jail through that program, and their records were totally wiped by the end of that program. And the thing is that a lot of these kids go in for marijuana charges, for drinking charges, very rarely for bigger things like assault or battery. But the thing is that this program is made to help people. It's made to give people classes, and that's what we really need. I had a kid at my school overdose from kind of very hard drugs. I think the official thing was like meth. That kid doesn't need to go to prison for possession. He needs to go to rehab, right? The way the system is set up is that we're throwing people, especially mentally ill people, in place, homeless people in like prisons, charging them to be in prisons. Now they go out in debt, and the programs are cheap, but they want to cut the programs. So you're just creating a system where it's like you get out of jail, you have no life, you get back in. You get out, you get back in. You get out, you get back in. There's no system to help people, and that's really concerning, especially coming from the people who claim God as kind of a source of their policy. It's against God, right?
We absolutely need to invest more in our rehabilitation services. Yeah, that's long-term growth instead of short-term profits. When we don't give people the help that they need, of course they continue going back to those harmful crutches. Of course they keep going back to those terrible decisions. When we help them, we give them services, they can build a new life. They can build back better to what provided. But when we keep them down, we keep pushing them further and further down, they can't. But if we invest, when we pass Amendment 30, and then if our legislature actually keeps it enforceable, we use taxes on weed to help fund our rehabilitation services. We can use that money to help our people. Also, one of the most terrible things about our society today is that we allow alcohol, we don't allow weed. Study after study after study shows that alcohol is much more dangerous than weed. But we'll criminalize weed instead of alcohol. It's already entrenched. But before the 1900s, weed wasn't criminalized. It actually started becoming criminalized because the guy who made Kellogg's thought that you could only have so much enjoyment in life. He was a Puritan, and he wanted to get out of it. So let's start calling it the devil's lettuce, just because he didn't like it and he wanted to get out of it. We can't keep going by these archaic, ancient laws that are absolutely harmful to our citizens. If we were going to ban weed over alcohol, it'd be alcohol every time. Because you have fewer car crashes with weed than alcohol. You have fewer homicides with weed than alcohol. Yeah.
Yeah, so what would you do as state senator to make the queer community in the state safer? And I mentioned this because quick story time, when I was driving over here, there was a massive Confederate flag on the I-75.
Yeah.
Horrible. If anyone's seen it, I'm so sorry. Yeah, that's my question.
Yeah, so Danny Burgess, my opponent, is a constant theme. Crazy how a lot of bad things are his fault. Sponsored the bill to protect Confederate monuments. Now, that flag is actually privately owned, so we can't actually get rid of it, unfortunately.
I thought they took it down.
But for the queer community, I mean, they are actively oppressed in our state. Our governor has been time and time and time again directly targeting them. I'm a teacher. There are several books banned in my school just for mentioning that gay people exist, just for acknowledging the reality of the world. At my school at USF, go Bulls, unfortunately not in this situation, the state is trying to take the private health records of the trans students, which is illegal and a flagrant attack on their human rights to privacy. But if our president didn't turn them in, she'd just be fired by Desantis. So I started to walk out. We have 5,000 students across every single university in the state to walk out, 5,000 students and educators across every single university to walk out at the same time. It was amazing about MSNBC and CNN because people care about their LGBTQIA plus friends and their people. What we need to do is acknowledge that gay people exist, and that's great. What we need to do is reverse these bans, restrict the hateful speech that Moms for Liberty is putting into our system. What we should also do is start actually calling out all of the hateful speech from our legislature. When I hear it on the Senate floor, I'll say, no, that is flagrantly homophobic. You are hurting the children of this state. Unfortunately, because we have a Republican supermajority and because they are wrapped around DeSantis' finger, who simply is homophobic, there won't be many laws that get passed. But what I'll do it every single day is debate the legislation they put forward. I will provide the full context of it so that it can be sued and won in court. Because what they do is sneak stuff into those bills. In HB 999, there was a really small portion of it that said you had to teach the other side in every single area. So if you're having a pride event, then you have to teach the other side. You have to recognize the other side, which is obviously insane, obviously ridiculous, but they're trying to sneak that in. And it wasn't debated on the Senate floor, so the full context of that couldn't be known to the people. What I'll be doing is ensuring that everybody's aware of the full context of these bills.
It's not just the Don't Say Gay bill. What DeSantis and his administration is doing with their campaign against all things woke and their pressure upon the state university system to eliminate diversity, equity, and inclusion programs in the state system is basically trying to make it less acceptable to be non-discriminatory. They're trying to make discrimination acceptable.
Yeah, literally, that's a great way to put it. They're making discrimination acceptable again. And diversity is the bedrock of education. To learn something, you have to interact with a new idea. To find a new idea, you have to see somebody with different lived experiences than you. Diversity is how we learn new things. And when they're attacking it, they're attacking education itself.
So again, in my clinic, I had an adult come in last week who wants to transition, and I had no one with her now. There used to be a clinic at the University of South Florida, and they're no longer taking patients. There's a clinic in Tampa that's no longer taking patients. So, these are grown-ups, these are adults. They're making a difficult choice in their life. It's important to them, and they can't choose their own path.
And I can't even call my students by their chosen name. Something that hurts nobody ever, not once has ever hurt a single person, but I can't do it. Because again, they don't care about the people. They care about maintaining their control of the people. They care about restricting their freedom while they're projecting care for our freedoms. At every single turn, they'll take away our rights. Our rights to dress how we want, to love who we love, and to have control over our body. Is terrible. And we need to get them out of there. And we can change it. One of the worst things that Trump has done to our country is make discrimination okay again. Is to make hate okay again. We had finally gotten past that curve where we saw a reconciliation in our country. We started to see LGBTQ reconciliation in our country. But he spearheaded the backlash to that. And not just him, but also people like Elon Musk, who take over, and Fox News, who take over these media sites and monopolize the narrative to let hate have a place to stand. What the UK is doing by threatening to prosecute Elon Musk for fostering this hate is good. He is fostering hate speech. We see hate crimes rise when Trump and Musk have more power. And you know what Trump just said he wanted to do? Let Elon Musk audit the federal government. I have never seen something more terrifying than Musk twittering the federal government.
Actually, I should mention like two things about that. One, when Musk bought Twitter, it was a 500% increase in the use of the N-word and other racial slurs, right? And I think the second thing is that although I think the only good thing Musk did with Twitter was that community notes, but when it checked in, he got mad and threatened to remove it. And I find that hypocritical because this is the party of small government. It is small government if you agree with that. If you are different, if you do not conform to the way they want you to live life, suddenly they're going to block you up. About the book banning. They banned a book written by a gay author about their life experiences that was in the adult section because a child could look at the cover and could grab it, right? And at that point, it's like they talk about personal responsibilities, but they don't want to shift that to the parents if their kids are doing wrong, right? They want the protection to be the state's protection only when you disagree with them, which is the same thing about voting rights too.
Their only consistent value is their own power. That's it. All they care about is maintaining their control. They have no real values in fiscal conservatism, in fiscal responsibility. Desantis appointed Ben Sasse to be the president of the U.S. solely because he was a Republican. And what did Ben Sasse do? Triple their overhead. They don't have fiscal conservatism. They don't have values of personal responsibility or personal freedom. Because again, as I've said, they'll take it away at every single opportunity. And I've said this to so many people, to so many parents. If you care about your kid getting the right values, talk to them. Making the idea taboo has never, ever kept a kid away from that idea. Banning books in schools will not do anything to keep kids away from that idea. You can find any idea online, and you won't have an adult to talk through it. Teachers are trained to help their kids understand new ideas, not to push them on them, but to give their kids the tools to critically analyze it themselves. But what the state is doing, taking any sort of critical thinking out of our school system, because he doesn't care about kids making up their own minds. He cares about kids making up their minds on his behalf, on his values. Well, on his continuation of his own power. Again, because they don't have any values. Anything else people care about saying?
Dick Cheney today, right?
Oh yeah, Dick Cheney endorsed Kamala Harris. That look, I was born not after Dick Cheney's time, but I wasn't conscious during Dick Cheney. And very, very few things I'd ever given credit for. But this was a value that he kept, not promoting a fascist. Donald Trump is straight up a fascist. Same with David. Is Bush voting for Trump or is Bush voting for Harris? Did you say anything? All right.
No. He won't endorse anyone.
Great. McCain,
No, he
again,
didn't.
very good thing on credit on. Who? Bush and Romney?
Yes, and McCain's son has.
And McCain's
I
son.
thought Bush wasn't
But
endorsing
McCain-
anyone. He's endorsing
Huh?
Harris.
No.
I mean, let's face it, the party of Trump is not the Republican Party that we didn't like anyway, but it's not, the party of Trump is not the GOP party that's of old.
And that's how you see they have no values. They made their entire platform Trump's platform. The Republican Party doesn't have a platform anymore. It is simply Donald Trump, and that's it. But yeah, the Republicans that have had power, that have the most power, are endorsing Harris because they know how dangerous Trump will be with it if he gets it again, especially after the Supreme Court decision. And you know the Republicans have been lying about how scared they are of Biden, because if they were really scared of Biden and the Supreme Court decision, and he has the Supreme Court decision, Fox News would be running rampant, talking about, oh, Biden's going to use it to turn all of our kids gay, to ban fracking, which, oh no, how terrible would that be to protect our water? Yeah. What else do we care about? Yeah.
As a voter, I just have a question regarding voting that you may or may not have the answer to. But recently in our phone call, it's a poll, we wanted to make a and then they asked you if you wanted to mail in votes. And so, what's your opinion? What's your suggestion to voters there? I've always been a voting person, kind of person, but what do you have to say there?
I say it can't hurt you. Get your mail-in ballot. Literally can't hurt you at all. Because, what? Oh, sure. You like it.
Election 1972. There wasn't a mail-in ballot. On election night, I was in a car accident. And so if you vote by mail, it's 3 times a year. You get your ballot. You can those are okay. But you get your ballot and you can fill it out or not. If something happens, let's say you're where you can't get to vote, you can have someone take it in for you or mail it if it's early enough. And if you want to vote in person, you take your ballot in, you turn it in, and you go vote. Simple as that.
And what the Republicans did, which most people haven't been able to hear about, is they made it so your mail-in ballot gets canceled after every every cycle, which is ridiculous. Because so many people just signed the waiver and then forgot about it, because that's what you should be able to do if you have a responsible government. But because we have a combative government that doesn't want the will of the people to be heard, they're actively taking away our voting rights. They're taking away our democracy.
So I had a separate question. So what would you do as state senator to deal with the homelessness crisis in the state? Because I still remember having a health issue, long story, and I remember just leaving the hospital and seeing like these line of tents, and I remember seeing for some of the tents, because some of them were open, of like a couple of children with like a mother in them. So what would you do to really reverse like the anti-homelessness rhetoric passed by Republicans? Because banning them doesn't do anything. They're just gonna exist. They're just gonna move. We're just gonna keep internally displacing them.
There are two separate ways to deal with that problem. The first one is that we're missing 500,000 units in this state to make housing affordable. If we were to build those 500,000 units, great, we'd have enough housing for everybody. The laws of supply and demand should take us down there. But the Republicans over the past decade have taken $2 billion out of the Sadowski Fund. This is the program that builds homes that people can afford and invests in community land trusts. The land stays in our hands. That money would have built 97,000 more homes in our state. It would have created 22,000 more jobs in our state. But the Republicans don't care about long-term growth. They only care about short-term investment. They stole that money out of our hands. But that's actually not the real answer. That's the answer that might actually get done. But the real thing is that there are 2 million homes in Florida that are vacant. 2 million vacant homes that are owned by places like BlackRock and these private equity monopolies that are buying up all of the property in the state, turning them from ownership properties into rental properties. So instead of building wealth, they drain our wealth. And when they buy up all the property, they're able to collude, which they are absolutely colluding. The federal branch in charge of regulating this has said that they are colluding using an application called RealPage. They're able to collude and just arbitrarily raise the rent prices. Again, literally stealing money from us. We need to regulate those monopolies, buying up all of our land and draining our economy. There are, when I go downtown to the places in my district, whether it's Plant City, Dade City, Zephyr Hills, I see a ton of just closed down and empty shops because the rent is too high for anybody to get them. The rent's too high in a place that doesn't have enough people buying the land. That tells you that the rent price is too high. It's not that there are people who don't want to start a business, they just can't. And they can't because there aren't enough local entrepreneurs. Even investing in franchiseship, not entrepreneurship. Franchiseship means that the money that we earn goes to the big corporation that's headquartered in New York or in San Francisco or in Ireland, rather than staying in our hands. That money just goes to the monopolies who own the land, rather than going to the people who are actually working it. We need to make sure that that money isn't in their hands, that we can actually own our land, and investing in community land trusts is one of the best ways we can do that. Community land trusts, either the land is in the community's hands. It's in 99-year leases rather than eternity leases that these corporations can hold onto the land forever and rent it out forever. Community land trusts keep our land in our hands. What other policies do you care about seeing change? How do you make Florida better?
I would like to make a correction. Bush did not endorse Kamala. he said he wasn't going to endorse anyone, but the fact that he's not endorsing the only Republican candidate says a lot. And the fact that 3 Democratic presidents have endorsed Kamala,
Yeah.
that's 3-0. So that's still a big lead.
Yeah, I like that score even. At the DNC, we saw more Republicans than in any other DNC ever. We saw Bill Clinton. We saw Barack Obama. The two past Democratic presidents were there. Hillary Clinton, our past nominee, were supporting Kamala Harris. Joe Biden, the current president, supporting Kamala Harris. As RNC, you didn't see a single Republican president, even though there are ones alive. Because even the establishment doesn't want Trump. They see how dangerous he'll be. And I really like what Bill Clinton had to say at the DNC. He was score counting. He was saying that since the 80s, Democrats have created 50 million jobs. Republicans, 1 million jobs. Republicans are worse on the economy. But for some reason, in every poll, people think they're better on the economy. And that's because their message of just no taxes plays well. Democratic messaging of when we all work together, we all get lifted up, takes a little bit longer to explain, takes a little bit longer to understand. And so they can create fear, they can create hate with their message. We have to do the work of creating love and creating personal responsibility, creating shared responsibility with our message. But Democratic policies of helping people helps people. It's crazy. It works. Republican policies of hurting people, of taking from people, hurts people. In Florida, with I call it the reverse Robin Hood tax code. Our bottom 3% of citizens pay on average 13% in taxes. The top 1% pay a quarter
I don't know.
of
It
that
didn't say
in
why.
taxes.
It just said there was a
One of the
restriction,
greatest
so I
lies
guess
of
it was
Florida
a talk.
is that we have a friendly tax code. Because they say we have no income tax, which sounds great. Except all taxes are taxes on your income, just taken out at different points. And when we have a 7.5% sales tax, and we have to spend all of your money, that becomes a 7.5% income tax. So the poorest people are paying more of their money in taxes than the richest people are. We have to reverse that. And they'll again lie to us, say, no, that money will trickle down. Well, why would a person who got to where they are because they were so greedy give us any scraps? There is no reason to. But again, the Republicans don't care. All they care about is short-term profits instead of long-term growth. What time is it? Oh, we've been going for a while. This is great, everybody. Do you have any final thoughts you want to do?
One little thing about trickle-down economics. Herbert Hoover tried that in the midst of the Depression, and it made things much, much worse. In fact, Trump is talking about corporate tax cuts during a time where they're declaring record profits, and they're laying off workers. They're laying off, like especially in the games industry, they're laying off studios after making millions and millions of dollars. If you think that money is going to trickle down, it's not. It's going to the bonuses of the guy who's laying off the hardest workers.
Yeah. What we see is that in the 80s, when the Republicans and Reagan specifically started attacking unions, is when inequality exploded. When we started taking away workers' rights, labor rights, is when we see workers get less money. Who would have thought? When workers get less money, they have less influence over our politics. So the richest people get more influence over our politics. That's when trickle down starts, where they say, oh no, trust us, give us the money, it'll be better for you. Who would have thought that doesn't work? And we see time and time again, my opponent, Danny Burgess, specifically targeting unions, taking away more workers' rights. In this state, we have the right to work. Again, a lie by the Republican Party. It's really just the right to fire for any or no reason. When we hurt the workers, we hurt the entire economy. Our economy is headed for disaster because all the money is being taken out of our hands and given to the richest. There are 6 people, let me see if I get them. Larry Ellison, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, Bernard Arnault, and Warren Buffett, who own $88 billion more than the bottom half of the entire country combined. Our economy cannot sustain that level of wealth inequality. We need to have money flowing throughout it in order to have a strong economy, not piled up in the top 0.001% of our hands. Yep.
This is kind of maybe like a joke question kind of stuff. But okay. So I've been to the state legislature for activism related things, and I've noticed that the Florida channel is just like the video quality is really bad. Like it's giving like 80s. Like I don't like it. So could you commit to appropriating funds for the channel, because I just feel so bad. I want like 4K. I want to see like really great detail like the legislator and like that.
Here's what I'll say. I will commit to modernizing the technology in all of Florida's government. Wow, that's incredible. The unemployment benefits couldn't go out to Floridians because we had antiquated, outdated technology, just like with the Florida channel. When we don't have functioning technology, we don't have a functioning government. We have government technology from the 80s. We have government services from the 80s. Well, actually, government services would have been better back then, because we saw more people getting government services than even with worse technology. One of the best Biden policies was $80 billion towards the IRS. We just saw that with investment, the IRS got $1.4 trillion from the richest Americans who spend their time avoiding taxes. Because the IRS doesn't have the technology and the ability to go after the richest Americans, they can only go after the poorest Americans. Again, taking from the poor and letting the rich steal our money. We need to improve all of our infrastructure and all of our technology to provide a great government. Anybody else? Any policies we want to see change? Any tax we want to see get better?
Could you talk about Desantis' corruption? Because he was getting like gifts from big guys.
Oh, Desantis corruption. What's the number one policy in Florida is home. And the number one problem that Florida's families face are home insurance prices. They've been skyrocketing. You talk to anybody, that's what they'll tell you. Now, DeSantis saw that. He said, oh my God, I can't believe how many people are getting hurt by the insurance industry. Let's deregulate them. You know why he did that? Because they built a $50,000 driving range under the governor's mansion. And DeSantis can't have to care about insurance prices because he's living in our house. He's driving our car. But they'll deregulate the insurance industry, letting them arbitrarily raise their prices. And he's using that driving range to let lobbyists buy $1,000 or $2,000 or $5,000 learning sessions with him on that driving range. And who knows what happens there. More DeSantis corruption. One of the best parts of Florida was our sunshine laws. It meant that any piece of paper that was handed around more than 2 or 3 people in the Florida government had to be accessible to all people in Florida. I mean, probably around the country. He got rid of that. So we don't know how much money he was spending on travel. We don't know how much money he was spending, how much of our money he was spending running for president. We don't know how much of our money he's been spending on his legal fees. We know it's been at least $20 million, almost as much as he spent feeding the people of Florida. He spent in lawsuits against the people of Florida. Yep.
One last question for me is, so kind of related to my earlier question, what would you do to fix the funding issue within public media? Because I think that, just like with the Florida channel, there's a huge issue with generating revenue for those stations. And I think it would really help to counteract the issues around corporate media and the polarization we're seeing in the country as a result of that. So what would you do to, just change that issue?
We need antitrust laws in our media. I mean, simple as that. CNN, Ted Turner revolutionized the media space with CNN and buying up a lot of local stations. Fox News and Sinclair then expedited that. They own 62% of the local media stations. And the reason we see so many Latino people turning Republican is because the minute they get into Florida, all of the Spanish language stations have been bought up by Republican media. So the minute they get here, they just get pounded with Republican advertising. We need to enforce antitrust laws so that those few people can't own the entire narrative of the state. We also have to invest in our local NPR station. I'm an NPR fiend. I love it. I got an MSNBC, but I was mad that I hadn't got an NPR yet. It is one of the best programs in our country because it's free and accessible to everybody. It provides nonpartisan, non-biased news service, or as non-biased as you possibly get, to everybody for free. It does investigative journalism. When the Tampa Bay Times has been seeing a huge decrease in investment because we have all these online spaces. They do some of the best investigation of any group in Florida because they care about the people. They're local to us. They're reliant on us. We need to invest in those small local newspapers and small local radio stations so that we get the best information possible. And why would the Republicans not want us to have the best information possible? I wonder. Yeah. Any other things that we want to talk about? All right, well, I want to thank you all for coming out. I want to thank you all for engaging even when you didn't come out. And I hope that you all go to benbraver.org. We need your support. We really do. Unfortunately, politics speaks the language of money, and my opponent has $69,000 on us. But with organized people, we can beat out organized money. We're on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, apps, all those things, and our message is getting spread out there. So if you go to benbraver.org, you can also find my social media and just repost my posts. It's free for you. You get incredible content courtesy of us and the Ben Braver team, and you get to spread our message to Floridians like you who need to hear it. Thank you so much. Yeah, free art time too.
Last year, I did
We're gonna win. Allow Microsoft to share the year notifications. Just, candidate who really care. Oh wow, they got a comment.
That's my insurance company. I was thinking, I wonder if they're.
It's done there.
So I just ended.
No. The settings over here. No, this. Okay, we don't. Yeah. Go to the X. Oh wait, that also.
Yeah.
Let's see.